Okay, looks like we're recording. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of time today, so I want to get started right away. But today I am talking to Colorado State Senator Pettersen about the election process. We met a couple years ago when I was testifying at the state capitol for Colorado's Youth Wellness Act. So do you want to say anything about yourself?
Yeah, I'm so happy to be with you, Lee. As she said, my name's Brittany Pettersen, and I represent part of Jefferson County. It's Edgewater, Littleton, and Lakewood. And I was elected to the state senate in 2018, and before that, I served in the House for 6 years. So happy to be with you to discuss the upcoming election.
Awesome. So my first question is, what is the connection between state congressional races and the presidential election, and how do the races influence each other?
So that's a great question. As you know, we have our three branches of government to ensure that there's a balance of power. It's, you have, in order to pass a bill, it has to go through both chambers. At the federal level, it has to go through the House and also the Senate, and then ultimately be signed by the president, which is the same in Colorado, actually. So I care deeply about state government. A lot of people pay attention to federal races more so than our state government, which has a much bigger impact on our day-to-day lives. Of course, putting aside this election because the stakes are so high with who is currently in power and what will happen if we don't actually change leadership. So, but the way that they're connected is you have to have, it's critical to get enough people in the House and the Senate in order to get anything done. So when you think back at when Obama was first elected in 2008, there was only 2 years where he was able to, where we had majorities in order to pass things that were going to address climate change and women's rights and, healthcare affordability and accessibility. So it's a very small window of time, usually when there's an opportunity to pass through, when you have majorities in both the House and the Senate and the presidency. So they are very much connected. You can't get anything done otherwise. And, we have critical races up this year. Ed Perlmutter is our congressman in the 7th Congressional District, and he's an amazing leader and representative for our area. He needs to win his election so he can continue to go fight for us for relief for COVID. We have been waiting for months, actually since August, for an additional package to go through to help people with unemployment insurance, help small businesses who are struggling through no fault of their own, people who we need state and local government support. We are in desperate need right now. That's, making sure that we're able to employ our firefighters or all of our first responders, making sure that we are not cutting healthcare during a pandemic, making sure we can still keep our teachers and support our schools. So there's so much at stake in the upcoming election, and every race matters.
Awesome. My second question is, how can people influence policy, and how can we be sure that our elected officials are hearing us?
So like you did, Lee, you went and testified at the Capitol. I think you're way ahead of the game. I didn't even go to the Capitol until I was in my 20s. And so, you're starting to get involved much earlier. So that's very exciting. So I think that you can get involved at every level. Oftentimes people think that it's just the elections that matter, but it's really getting the right people elected and then making sure that you're working with them to bring your ideas. And, if you've seen problems in our system, highlighting it so that we have, so that we know what we should be working on for you. And then coming down to the Capitol to testify and sharing your personal stories. Those are, sharing your own experiences or your own passion and reasons for being there is very compelling for the people who are there to listen to you.
Awesome. Yeah, and then what do you see as the most critical issue for Colorado on this year's ballot?
What do I see as the most critical issue for Colorado
For
for what?
on this year's ballot
Oh, on this year's ballot. The most critical issue.
or
Oh.
issues.
Well, I would say, I mean, when I was first trying to figure out what to do when I was younger, I cared deeply about climate change, women's rights, gay rights. Uh, you know, it was really difficult for me to pinpoint the issue that I wanted to work on specifically because I cared about a wide range of things. And that's why working for Democrats was what I chose to do, because, and then ultimately I ran myself. So I would say, even though there's 11 ballot measures that are on this year's ballot, they're they can be complicated, a little confusing, and some of them are incredibly detrimental. So my husband runs an organization called Progress Now, and they came out with a progressive ballot guide. So they walk through each ballot measures and kind of the pros and cons and why they recommended what they did. So that can be a useful tool for some people. And so if you Google that, you can read more about the ballot measures coming up. But I would say, voting for Democrats up and down the ticket is going to reflect all of those pieces that I think are critical issues for the future of Colorado, which is protecting our democracy, protecting our access to voting rights, making sure that the pandemic has really shined a light on the inequities in our system. And so we have a lot of work to do to address the inequities from, lack of access to quality schools and healthcare, to economic opportunity, and ultimately, what we've seen with policing and just how it affects different communities at an alarming rate compared to those of us who are white. So we have to deal with systemic racism. When I think about climate change and how little time we have to actually change the path that we're on, I have a 9-month-old baby. And when I think about the world that he was brought into, it's, nothing could be more motivating than fighting for his future. So we have a lot of work to do together, and I believe strongly in supporting progressive candidates, and those are going to be your Democrats up and down the ballot.
Yeah, so how does that translate to like specific ballot measures? Because I know a lot of people who are going to be watching this are Colorado voters.
Yeah, so the ballot measures, there's 11, and I think that, there's some that make smaller changes, like the one that adjusts the bingo regulations, which is not going to impact our daily lives. But then there's others that that will significantly impact our ability to do our work in the legislature. That's including a tax cut that sounds good. It's reducing the state income tax just by a small amount, and it would be detrimental to our budget. So while it sounds good, sometimes that's what's difficult with ballot measures, is that they can sound good, and and a lot of people will vote yes, but it will have long-term negative impacts on our state. So that's something that is probably going to pass, unfortunately, and it's going to bring a $250 million hole in our budget in Colorado, and we're already underfunding education, transportation, all of those investments that are essential for our future. We are almost dead last in the nation because of our constitutional restrictions for funding. And so with that additional tax cut, it's going to be a very difficult situation. And so, normal, regular people, middle income folks are going to see a $40 tax break. I mean, that's nothing. So this isn't going to help real people. It will help the people who are the most wealthy and not regular Coloradans. So that's one that I'm really worried about. Sorry, somebody's calling my Google Voice. Of course. But yeah, so I would recommend going to the Progressive Voter Guide to look through all of the ballot questions, and there's a lot of them and a lot of outstanding. I mean, I know it's difficult for people to navigate.
Yeah. And my last question is, how do you recommend young people take action since we can't vote yet? Like, I'm 15. I wish I could vote. I wished I could vote in 2016. So what can I do, and what can my peers do to take action?
That's a great question. I think that voting is just the bare minimum of what we need to be doing as engaged citizens. And so even though you can't vote yet, you can still volunteer for candidates. You can reach out to their campaign to say, I really believe in you. I want to make sure that that you make it across the finish line. What can I do to help? And there's a lot of opportunities to engage virtually, and so that everybody is safe during the pandemic, but you can still connect to voters. Even beyond, once you get past electing somebody, there's so much to do to make sure that you're calling your representative and your state senator and talking about the issues that you care about and what you want to see them working on. And then you can volunteer in their office even. So people who are elected are always looking to help mentor younger people who are interested to come learn about the process. Lee, if you want to volunteer with us next year, we'd love to have you, and we'll make sure that everybody is safe during the pandemic. But there's so many ways to get involved, and then also coming down to testify on bills that you care about. And so maybe we can do, like, once we're past this election, we can host something to explain kind of what the process is like down at the Capitol for people, and how to track bills, where do you even look, things like that I think, like I said, that's something that I didn't start tracking until I was in my 20s, was really paying attention to the legislation that was going through and not just hearing about it on the news. And so we can help people follow that earlier. So I think that there is so many ways to get involved, and voting is the bare minimum. So eventually, it's pretty amazing that you're 15 and this involved. But as much as we can try to lift up the curtain and show people kind of how this works, I think that young people will see the opportunities that they have to really make an impact, instead of it seeming like a system that they, is something that they don't know enough about and that they shouldn't get involved in.
Yeah, so it's really just, there are so many things, but it's just such a big, complicated system that it seems like there's not a lot that we can do. So it's really, you're saying it's just a matter of telling people what opportunities exist.
Yeah, I think it's lifting up the curtain and showing how it actually works. The basics, from how a bill passes to where do you find all the information on who's carrying what bill, where's their contact information, how do you engage that way, and then also volunteer opportunities.
Awesome. So I think we're about out of time now. And this interview will be posted on Project 5 Billion's website, so you can check it out there, and on our social media pages. So thank you, Senator Pettersen, for doing this interview. I learned a lot.
Good. Well, thank you, Lee, for caring so much and reaching out. We'll do more of these. And
Awesome.
Hopefully you'll get to see my baby Davis in the future on one of these.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for your